they're all kind of dressed alike almost? Will one of you come up here? Just one. Come on up. You have to be our model. Turn around. This is their shirts. A lot of them got these shirts because they've been so loyal to coming to Mass all these past months. And this is what they get for the summer to wear. And you can tell by the picture on the front, everybody will know where they're from. They're from Mary Mother, right? Go ahead and have a seat. Okay? Thank you. I'm getting a little older, and my legs start hurting me if I stand too long in the same place. So since you have the comfortable carpet, I'll have the comfortable chair. Fair enough? Okay. You probably heard the stories about yourself when you were born, and you came forth from your mother, and you came out crying most of the time. Now, that was good you were crying because that helped you breathe. It's very important to keep breathing, right? Okay. But you also came out eventually pretty hungry. So then they had to make sure you got close to your mom because she was going to feed you with food that came out of her own body. She was going to feed you with milk that she had for you. And you're not the only ones that have started out a life like that crying. The day we heard a reading about the Jews. And the Jews were the people of God that came before us. And God was going to send them on a long journey. It was going to take 40 years. And right away, they know that the soners started. Have you ever gone on a driving trip with your family? Long distance on your family? You're in the car, and you're saying, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And it keeps getting longer and longer. Pardon? I heard that baby crying. Is that your sister? Okay. You're really attuned to her voice, aren't you? So you can tell when she's crying. Well, we're glad to have her, aren't we? Sure. Okay. If you're on a long trip with your family, all of a sudden you're saying, are we there yet? And can we stop and get something to eat? Because I'm getting hungry. The Jews that were on a long journey of 40 years, they got tired and they got hungry. And they start complaining to God. Where's the food, God? We're getting hungry. So God had to come up with a food that would help them every day. He had the leader of the Jews strike a rock, and they found some water there, so they had water. But then he gave them a strange thing called manna. And it looked like a little piece of bread, kind of like our hosts look at Mass. And that little piece of bread was so important to them. It only came to them every day in the morning when they woke up. They could have this bread that had a little oil on it. And they said, this is getting us through the desert. So this is so important. We're going to take one of those and we're going to wrap it up. And we're going to try to keep it as best we can. And they always travel with this big box they carried with them called the Ark of the Covenant. And they put one of these pieces of bread in the ark because they never wanted to forget how God was loving them so much he would feed them when they were lost. Okay? Now, sometimes, have you ever been to a wedding? Ever been to a wedding? Okay. Have you seen a wedding on television? Okay. What? I know. You look so comfortable. I've gone to weddings, and then after the wedding, there's this big dinner. See? Big dinner. But then there's one thing at the dinner nobody can touch except the bride and groom. They get to touch it first. What is it? Cake. Yes, it's a big cake. It's the wedding cake. And you can't go near it. I don't care how hungry you are, you can't go near it until the bride and groom go there because they're going to slice out some of the cake for themselves. But instead of each of them eating it, they're going to try to feed it to each other. Yeah, You're laughing. It is funny to watch. It's funny to watch them take that bread and say, now, and you never know if they're going to do it politely or if they're going to shove it in their mouth. And then they have icing all over their face. And then I found out that years ago, I don't know if they still do this, but years ago, the bride and grooms or somebody in the family would take one piece of that cake and they would wrap it up as nicely as they could so that it wouldn't get harmed in the refrigerator. They put it in the refrigerator and they kept it for a whole year. Anybody remember that tradition? Yeah. And on the first anniversary, the first celebration of their marriage after 1 year, they opened the refrigerator, they unsealed this piece of cake they had, and they looked at it and said, "It looks okay, it smells all right." And then they shared that piece of cake to say, let's remember that day when we got married is still here today because we're still on this journey of marriage. That's a wonderful way to use food. You see, food doesn't always mean food that we eat. It means food that has a whole nother meaning behind it. Sometimes you'll hear some of your adults out here say, you know what, we should have lunch together. And you say that and you say, okay, we can have lunch together. Now, they're not saying let's go eat something. They're saying let's go eat something so that we can visit. The food is not the important thing. What's important is that they're talking to one another. Okay? Now, all those things you hear are all about love. Now, when Jesus came into the world, do you know where he spent most of his time? At a table. He was always visiting people at their tables. But the amazing thing he did, he ate with the people that nobody else wanted to eat with. You know? And he would eat with the children, he would eat with the adults, and in eating with them, he said, I have a way to remember me. When I'm gone, after I've died, because I loved you so much, I want you to take the bread I'm going to give you and the cup I'm going to give you, and I want you to do what that bride and groom did, but I want you to do it every week. Every week, I want you to take the bread I give you and the wine I give you, because that's coming from me. In fact, it is me. It is me. It's like the milk that came from your mother was really of her. This is really of Jesus. And it's the way that we discover God's love for us, because he wants to feed us. Even as old as I am, I still want to be fed by him, because he helps me through life. He helps me know that I'm loved by him. But he also said, since you're all sitting at the same table, you got to learn to love each other. So you can't be fighting and pushing, okay? You can't be calling each other names, all right? You have to be trying to help each other. Now, that doesn't always happen at the family table, right? Especially brothers and sisters. Thanks for that. Thanks for that comment. But Jesus wants to be our food, and so he said, every week you get around the same table. It's the table you have pictured on your T-shirt. It's saying, this is the table I want all the Mary Mother of the people come to, so that I can feed them again and again and again. So they know how to love each other and know how to love me. And then at the end of the Mass, the priest says a very unusual thing. He says, the Mass is ended, go out, leave. And sometimes we say, thanks be to God. Are we thanking God because the Mass is over? No. Or are we thanking God because we agree with him? He's saying, okay, here's the Mass, we've had the Mass, but the word Mass comes from a bigger word that means mission. You're sent out. So after Mass, you have to say, where's Jesus sending me today? He's sending us to our families where we have to try to love one another and be good to each other, right? And he's sending the adults out to continue to model the gospel for other people. so that they know where our source of love is coming from. But here's a word I want to teach you, and see if you can remember it. Have you heard of the word companion?
Yes.
What does companion mean?
Companion is, for example, Robin, Batman.
Oh, Robin and Batman are companions. Okay, you got the picture. Right? Right? Two people together a lot. A companion. That word means, in the original language, that word means one with whom I break bread. One who with I break bread. So you go to your family tables and you break bread. You come to this table and we break bread. We share the cup. And so we become those with whom we eat bread. It's a way to remember that we don't receive Eucharist alone. It wasn't meant to be, we don't wrap the host up and say, this is yours, and this little plastic bag has your host, and this little plastic bag has your host. No, there's only one loaf, and we're only one body. But together, we can show these children what it is to grow up in the faith. To know that someone's, pardon? I think I know what you just said. Everyone, yes, yes, true. I'm getting a lot of wealth of information here. Which is why teachers always say to parents, we won't believe half of what your children tell us that goes on in the house. You don't believe half of what they tell you goes on in school. Right, teacher? Right. So may you continue. How many of you received your first communion? Okay. And how many of you are getting ready to do that? Okay. I can't wait when you're all in the communion together. So now I'm going to send you out, but only as far as your families, okay?
One more thing. You know, when you say Mass has ended, you should have one of those recordings on mail call that says you're not dismissed yet, or someone died, or get that temperature out.
I'll write that down. Thank you. I'm getting a lot of advice here. Go in peace back to your families, okay? Now, all of us can stand, adults and children, and on the back of